Well, Pure Signal Pod back here at AWS reInvent Day 3. Ryan Medellin joined by Kevin Erickson. And I mean, this is what Pure Signal was built for, this type of guest. And it's a homecoming of sorts as we have the Director of Data and AI in the construction infrastructure sector, Mike Duffy, joining us. Mike, glad to have you. And I want to start off with this because as any good broadcaster will do, I did a little homework. Okay. And I can tell you're just loving being here because I saw your placemats, we'll call them placemats, that you posted on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that, and then we can get into what you deal with.
Awesome. Okay, great. Well, I am excited to be here. I'm a big fan of the podcast, by the way, too. And reInvent's just a great place to be. I think that particular post was funny because you can't help but wonder when you're here. It's just like the scale of it is just staggering of how many, 60,000 attendees plus all the staff, logistics, and moving across all these resorts. And so I just was, thinking like, how do you do something like this? And so, I started talking to one of my favorite AI chatbots and said, what does it take to like plan and execute an event like reInvent, and work through all the logistics and all the scaling, right? And then basically had it build me a playbook to build my own conference, and then used Nano Banana, which is the best image generation tool out there right now, and said, take this playbook and help me create a DIY build your own reInvent conference in the style of a vintage model railroad instruction set. And so that's how I got there. But it's just some of the fun things that I think AI opens up for us is just instantaneous access to the world's knowledge in a way that just the conventional internet search didn't do. And then the ability to just explore ideas, so quickly and in so many directions, and multimodal now too. It's just possibilities are endless.
Well, Mike, thank you for joining us. I mean, you're a friend, you're a client, you're a colleague. It's really been, and one of the things that I'd love for you just to kind of share. You can dance between the parts that are specifically to AWS, but really one of the things I really appreciate about your and my discussions over the time has really been how you're thinking about AI and really changing how you take processes, work, technology. I've seen you do this in your personal life from that, and I've seen you're now doing it in your clients. And so I'd love for you to maybe just share a little bit of the context of your own personal motivation behind that and just inspiration. And then I'd love then maybe to think about how does that tie into what you're learning here and what you're seeing here as you're starting to think about you and your day job for the rest of the year, next year.
Okay, great. Yeah. I guess like you said, I mean, I think for me, AI is it's obviously become ubiquitous for most of us, but it's also just been continually transformational all throughout my life and, work when I was with clients and now in the industry. And I just think, just every single month, the technology keeps evolving and it just keeps helping us reimagine the entire ways we work. And it's, I think we've talked a lot about in the past, like the book Reshuffle, plenty of other good points of view out there. But really, what I see happening a lot is just so many barriers being suddenly broken down so quickly that a lot of people are left wondering, what do I even do now? Like, I mean, when I remove the constraint of human expertise and human knowledge, all of a sudden, when the vast majority of the work we do is knowledge work, what do I do now, right? Once I get a handle of this really powerful technology that can process infinite amounts of unstructured data in seconds and do things that would have taken teams of people weeks or months can now be done in minutes or hours. And so I think it's just fun and it's exciting and it's scary to just think about, how do we leverage that? How do we reshape and reshuffle and reform our job roles, our functions, the way we deliver value to our customers?
Yeah, just like I'm usually the one that will ask 5 questions in one moment. You just gave me like 18 threads to pull on, but and including going back, I have to go back to the intro. It's funny because one of the original clients of Credera's lore, our background was built on what is the world's leading event planner and exposition. And so you essentially just destroyed what Credera did for 10 years last night, and redid it in a funny motif. But, but what is really interesting, because not that, I mean, that's interesting, but it does speak to how much it's changing and how quickly. So, I think maybe, we've talked about reshuffles. I'm going to start there. And one of the things I really appreciate about you is the quest for knowledge. And so I'm curious now, obviously in our consulting past, I mean, that's part of why I think clients hire us. And now you've gone to the dark side and become a client, which is a great evolution. But it is like, I'd love to how in your role, how do you continue to bring in the learning and the thinking? I think that's one thing. I'm watching you build this organization now and have a chance for you to put your fingerprints on it, which is really cool because you didn't have the flexibility to do that completely the way you would have liked in previous stops. But I'm just kind of curious and how you were thinking about that. How's that then actually tie back to end of the year budget planning, all the normal crap that goes into businesses that we have to fight against? But how are you thinking about that?
I mean, well, in terms of how do I try to shape and influence? It's, part of it for me is it's a continual loop, I guess, of, go and find new knowledge, like finding good books that present good points of view and new perspectives of thinking about what's happening. But then for me, it's also, I think it's really important to do it. And so I spend a lot of time outside of work, also just using AI in every possible way I can. And all throughout my personal life, I've got all kinds of projects. I've even started posting a series about a system I built called Jarvis that helps me manage my whole
name might be trademarked, by the way.
It might be. So we'll just call it Jason for now. But that might be trademarked too. But it's just one of many ways in which I just try to take all the new things that are coming out and rapidly iterate myself, try things, see what works, see what breaks, and then do the same thing at work too. And and that's how I help the people, my own colleagues, team members, and throughout the organization, think of ways that we can start applying the technology meaningfully to transform and reshape we work together, the way we collaborate, the way that value moves through the organization, the way that handoffs take place or get completely eliminated. And so, it's just that kind of that loop of explore, learn, see what's there, do it, and then apply it.
Yeah, one of the things that it's intriguing in our discussions has been that and I've seen this in multiple avenues and worked together and been around each other for a couple of years, is that oftentimes when you're in a leadership role, times you're directing and you're communicating. About what I love about what you also tinker, you prototype and you work through the changes. So it's not only about learning, direction, using, but you're actually also really collaborating and creating in the midst of it, which is, I think, one of my challenges as I've moved up in roles is that you get further and further removed from the actual real work. So I often describe myself as all overhead, but I am, because I'm curious, is as you think about this past year, because I think as we've talked about before, just even being here this week, it's just amazing to me to what the discussions are happening today from what we're being discussed from an AI AWS perspective earlier this year. What would be one or two areas that either have been most surprising for you of where your day-to-day experience could be personally or in your job or role is different today than it was maybe not that long ago?
Gosh, this year already we're at the end, but it's just been the most mind-blowing, head-spinning year I can ever think of in technology. I mean, it's just hard to believe when I think about just the things we were doing, when we were working together with AI in January or last December, the meetings we were having, the strategies we were coming up with, and how to go to market and how to use this technology, and the problems and limitations we had then, so many are gone already. The way I think about how, the technology practice and software engineers were just starting to adopt coding assistants at scale. And it was a great tool to, if you really, really knew what you were doing on the software engineering side, you could instruct it to create me this class or, create me this component. And, only 6 months later, Claude Code came out, really started to change the way agentic coding assistants work, to the point now, Replit, Claude Code, and other tools like that are allowing people who know nothing about code to, as Ethan Malik says, speak things into existence. And we're seeing this all the time in our organization right now. We're getting business subject matter experts who've never seen code get a hold of tools like Replit and realize that all these problems I'm trying to fix, like all the manual email processes, Excel processes, or form entries I have to do, all of a sudden they sit down and they have 1 or 2 late nights with something like Replit, and they come out with a fully working full stack software application that's, not the thing they're going to deploy, but the thing that they can then come to the IT organization and say, hey, I've just taken everything that's been in my head and here's what it looks like. Can you go and, operationalize this? And that just cuts out this entire part of the business process where we used to have to translate business problems into requirements, business requirements, functional requirements, technical requirements, back and forth, iterations, teams of engineers, teams of analysts. All of that suddenly, it might not disappear yet, but it becomes so small, and it just really empowers everybody now to solve problems so much more quickly, right? And so much more autonomously, I guess.
For me, it's always been like it really unlocks the human element even more. We're allowed to be more present in the conversations and meetings and the work that we're doing to help solve problems, rather than, to maybe back in the day during that meeting, all you're thinking about during that is, this is a lot of work. This is going to take a lot of time. How am I going to manage that? What are we going to create? Otherwise, you're there in that meeting. You don't even have to worry about it, and you can just focus on them and help them solve the problems, and that's all happening in the background.
Yeah, I'm an optimist about it. I mean, I think there's a lot of things to be scared about too, but I think the opportunities to really empower and unlock human capital is what's really exciting, right? Because we get, when you free people up from all of the things you just described, Ryan, which is like, okay, taking all those notes and then going back and processing all of that into formal requirements and then going and doing planning sessions. Like, well, think of all the new things you can do now, right? You can get, like you said, you can get more directly to the innovation and the value creation. I think that's the trick.
Yeah. Well, and then how like firms like yours now are that are, we've done a lot of innovation type sprints using those classical elements, and it's really fun now to see working with our clients to where, what used to be a week process, or used to be this, you come back and now you're doing it on the fly, you're working through it, you're getting so much further through it. I think one of the things really interesting is really around how with executives, like, I think you a lot of that stuff you are able to get, or you have a very fractional amount of time of an executive, you can be doing what you described with what you did in the trailer. Well, now you can be doing that with the C-suite. And so for them, they're seeing the power of that, of what they want to look at and how that plays in. So, when we go is thinking about how you're thinking about creating and serving your clients, your internal clients in your business, how we're thinking about serving you and our other clients. It's like, it's really now changing how we approach the business model. It's changing a way how we work together, which then maybe gets here, take us back to, you mentioned Reshuffle at the beginning of this, which I think is a fascinating book that, that you and I've been dialing on, and really around this idea of how companies really think about change in a much more holistic way that's not around incremental change. And it's fun to watch you do it and help bring that into your company and build a partner with you on that. But I think that's what next year will hopefully bring, and then bringing it back to reInvent, and knowing that it's going to be powered by all amazing technologies that are coming driving into the ecosystem. But so I don't know if there's really a question there, but more of a statement.
That's what I mean, but really exciting thoughts too, and I'm excited as well. I think next, just we think about how much happened in this year, and even thinking about it, reInvent this past 2 days, the announcements, the keynotes this morning and yesterday, and just how much more powerful the agentic AI and the tooling, and now customizing models. It's hard to even fathom what next year's going to look like, but it's going to be really exciting. I'm excited to partner together and to really think creatively about how to apply that at scale and really just change the way we do.
Well, thank you, Mike Duffy. Kevin, great job as always. This has been another edition of Pure Signal here at AWS reInvent. Stay tuned for more content because it's coming. Thanks.